Sometimes I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, sleepless, insomnia, and I have a little tablet by my bed. Not a sleeping tablet, but kind of. Little Samsung thing. And I usually just read Wikipedia articles at 4 in the morning and generally forget most of it next day. And I was reading about Alan Turing's machines. And Alan Turing was a guy in the 30s, genius, mathematical genius, and he was one of the main guys who worked out the Enigma, worked out how to crack the Enigma code. And a lot of his stuff is basic artificial intelligence. Now, I wouldn't say I'm especially clever, especially thick, but when I read what these guys have done and the way they've thought about things and worked out things, I just realise I'm as thick as two short planks really compared to these guys. And via a little link I went on to reading about Elon Musk. He's the guy behind Tesla cars, PayPal, SpaceX. You've all seen those incredible rockets landing, standing up. And suddenly this guy seems to come from nowhere and landing rockets on little targets in the middle of the sea. And he's into artificial intelligence, making interfaces that will go inside the brain, join up with computers. And it's a bit like the man who fell to earth really, because he wants to eventually get his spaceships, his rockets able to fly to Mars. He's only 46 years old. Makes you feel inadequate even. And you see some people have so much vision. Another one thing, he's started another company off called the Boring Company, and he wants to build a hyperloop, which is a kind of system where cars run on tracks underground. Makes you wonder, like, how can a guy who just started from nothing really, how his scientific Vorsprung has advantage over groups like NASA who've been doing it for years, and suddenly he just pops out of the ether, landing rockets on little barges at sea, standing up. And that's where you see the wonder of computers. And that guy I was talking about before, Alan Turing, he wrote a lot of computer programs, like for example one to play chess, but there was no computer to run the program, so he'd just sit with loads of pieces of paper with all the instructions on, and he'd sort of play the human computer and run through all these pieces of paper he's got written down with certain options. Basically a simple algorithm, and because they hadn't got around to inventing the computer yet that could run his programs, he had to run them manually, kind of with his own head. I've always been a science fiction fan since Star Trek, watching Star Trek as a little kid. And at school I remember the careers master telling us by 2000 nobody will have to work because the robots will be doing all the menial jobs and everyone will just be laying around sniffing the lotuses. But that hasn't come to be. in one way it has all the robots making everything, all that stuff you buy from China is all robotics, cars, even houses slowly now, they're modular houses. And yeah, it's strange to think where it's going to go. The rise of the robots. Look at these places here. Just great big logistics centres, all run by machines, computers, or automated shelves, picking things off, sending them out to the firms to deliver to people. All the things that people need. Anyway, back to Mr. Carter, the careers master in the 70s, who said we wouldn't have to work in the year 2000. It seems like everyone's working even more. But I wonder what percentage of jobs are just totally useless. You know, people shuffling papers. At this place here you're looking at now, this big pellet factory, taking old wood and turning it into pellets so hipsters can have little pellet stoves in the city and say they're burning wood. I can't see the plus point here at all of getting wood and drying it and pressing it into little pellets and then delivering it in these trucks everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of work for the sake of work in a way. All these machines and silos being built to make this thing work. And around here there's lots of little factories that make parts for cars. And imagine if you worked in a plastics factory that was making the plastic ashtray in a Mercedes, spending all your life doing that. All the people on phone lines, helplines, call centres, advertising, it's all kind of pointless, isn't it? Right, here's a quick jump of thoughts. Remember in Victorian times when people could get offended at the spindly leg of a table, and they used to even have like little doilies that they used to put over table legs if they were too shapely, because it might remind the men of a woman's leg, and they might lose control and not know what to do. Kind of like a burqa for a table leg. And you see so much in the papers now about all these sex scandals and what happened in the 70s, all people grabbing bottoms and grabbing busts and stuff like that, which was kind of normal in them days. And back then people had big families and loads of kids in the families, and you know, worrying about population overload and that lot. And slowly in the West we got round to saying the ideal family is 2.4 kids, nuclear family, and got to stop having kids. And now with the demographics, you find out that the populations are dying out in Europe, getting too old. That's why they've got to get immigrants in to go in the old people's homes to look after the old people and to do a lot of the jobs which are not done yet by robots. And seeing as we said no, we're not going to have kids, we're going to spend all our money making those plastic ashtrays and buying that car and getting all the IKEA furniture and having lovely houses and little dogs and going out on the weekend hang gliding and all that stuff. But in third world countries they're still breeding like rabbits, and they have 10 kids or something. And we in the West look down on that, even though our populations are dwindling away. And we've kind of sold our right to play with the machines instead, or have the machines do it for us. And you know, you can't pick up a newspaper these days without some kind of sex scandal. I guess it all started with the pill in the 60s. Free love, all that stuff. And then went a bit out of hand, and the counter-revolution came in, and everyone got a little bit more prudish, till we're looking back at things that happened in the 60s and the 70s and prosecuting people for stuff they did back then in the eyes of today. And at the same time, we've got this thing saying sex is just for fun, it's just for entertainment, it's not for bringing up families. And at the same time, we've got things like Viagra which have come out, and I've never tried it, but I guess a lot of people have tried it. And so you've got people with rampant sexuality and no way to let the tension off. And did Viagra and the internet come about at the same time? And you get people spending hours on the internet, hyped up on Viagra, watching porn on the internet. And the next level is going to be sex robots. Robots with artificial intelligence as sex slaves. It's just, you couldn't make it up really. It's so twisted and perverted, and the knights of perverted science. So everything's a big experiment, isn't it? Nature's having experiments with all the different life forms, dinosaurs and undersea slugs. It's just saying, no, it's not really saying, it's just complicated things coming from simple physical principles, and like crystals building up into a matrix of something. And that's just what life is, isn't it? It's just things evolving and trying out different things. And why is it any different with mankind? Just seeing what'll happen. And at the moment, because we've got them big brains working overtime, and we're basically lazy and want to just lay in the bushes and get smashed and have sex, so we try and make life easier. It kind of gets harder because no one's got any time to lay in the bushes anymore. I'm just heading to the motorway now, and this always makes me feel a bit weird on the motorway. I wonder where they're all going. Funny to think really that the Germans invented the car, and so much high precision machines, and they're a country that's just about the worst affected with having no children, because everyone's too busy fiddling with machines. And even though it looks nice, it's all shiny and new and precise, at the end of the day it's deadly. messy kids with stinking nappies and kids with meningitis and scraping up baby sick off the floor. Oh, it's better to sit in the cabrio, isn't it, and with a nice stereo system and drive through the mountains listening to Wagner. And for a short term you think you're having a great time, but then suddenly there's nobody there to keep it all going.